This episode of Lawyers Tell All is brought to you by the Intake Academy. Are you ready to convert more callers to qualified cases, rapidly qualify good cases, and transform unqualified prospects to advocates for your firm, whether you're able to handle their case or not? Visit www.intakeacademy.com and discover how to cement relationships with more of your ideal clients. Get them to commit to you and send you more referrals than you ever thought possible. Welcome to the Lawyers Tell All podcast, where Chris Mullins, the preeminent sales and communications consultant in the legal industry, shows you how it looks through lawyers' eyes. Here, innovators in the trenches provide powerful insights that help you connect with new clients, handle the sometimes harsh realities of the legal profession, and embrace the mindsets needed to succeed. Be sure to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, lean in, tune in, and let's take a deep dive.
Hello, everyone. It's Chris Mullins with Lawyers Tell All, and today I'm interviewing Seth Price, and Seth is going to tell you about himself.
Oh, hey, Chris. Good to see you. I feel like I met you a gazillion years ago at an early PILMA, and have followed your work ever since. But for those that you that know me, my name is Seth Price. Graduated law school a gazillion years ago, but ended up starting a law firm with a buddy 20 years ago, end of this year. And we started just two of us in his basement table, and from day one we divided and conquered, where he did the lawyering and I did the operations and marketing management, and we took that step by step. I really enjoyed the digital marketing side, so I was building websites and phones would ring and make sure they got answered, and he would go run to court and get people's money, and it worked nicely. We had another lawyer at another website, another lawyer another website, and had grown nicely. Today we stand at about 50 lawyers doing everything from PI to criminal, family, and beyond, and have made every mistake, but have slowly but surely put together a really solid operations and leadership team that helps run and drive our progress. About 10 years ago this year, I took what was then our in-house digital team at Price Benowitz and spun that into what is today Blue Shark Digital. And Blue Shark Digital, now market leader in SEO and maybe the thought leader in local search. We really looked at how to get cases for lawyers, starting with Price Benowitz and now for about 300 law firms nationwide, looking at how do we leverage local. Google has pushed us more and more into that direction, the proximity update over the years. And what Google has pushed to is really followed our thesis, which is if we create a local presence digitally, that Google will see that, and that is what leads to success bringing in clients online. So that's sort of the two things that keep me busy all day. And I feel like between lessons learned for myself as well as things that I've seen by looking into, as you have, many law firms over the course of the decade, really gives you some insights as to things take on commonalities. You see the same mistakes being made, and you're like, hey, everybody's making the same mistakes. Why can't we help people fix them more quickly? And I think that's one of the things that I've been passionate about, is trying to, through podcasts and other media, make sure that we share loudly what we see out there so that other people can learn from that and build and grow their business more efficiently.
So talk about some of those mistakes.
I would say, look, one that you've spent your career trying to correct would be intake. Every time you sort of think that you're golden and that you're getting every case you want to be getting, generally that is a fool's errand. That is constantly changing and evolving. And if you're not measuring it, you're in trouble. If you're not listening to recorded calls, you're going to be in trouble. And making sure that you have leadership team and training and quality control that is meaningful, because if you don't, even if you have great people for a moment, over time, those people have good days, good months, bad months, and that it really affects your bottom line. You don't need to spend a ton more on marketing. One of the places you can really see ROI is figuring it out. It's not easy. There's no, even, for somebody who's knowledgeable as you, there's no one playbook, there's no one size fits all, but it's putting fundamentals in place to make sure that you don't have a hole in your bucket and that you are striving towards consistency and more getting as many of your wants in the hopper as possible. And I think also differentiating between fee for service law firms, particularly the B2C space, criminal, family, immigration, bankruptcy, whatever it may be, and personal injury, where it's a very different sales cycle. When somebody just signs and doesn't have to give you cash, it's a very different transaction and something it took me a long time to fully grasp. I knew it, but that it's two worlds and it's two different skill sets. And if you, it's one thing to have a little bit of overflow going from one to another, but that it really is two different mindsets and it takes different methodologies. So that's one bucket I would say that, everybody has room for improvement on. Being kind, many, the overall majority are not doing it well at all. And those that are always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a work in progress. I would say the other piece, and I just wrote about this on LinkedIn a little bit ago, is investing in a strong ops backbone. Whether you're a tiny firm with an office manager, whether you're a medium firm with a firm administrator or director of operations, or if you're a giant firm with a COO, it's a continuum, but that as a legal professional, as a lawyer, as you add those components in, which help you build out everything from recruiting to intake to marketing, that non-lawyer operations hub is the backbone to building and growing and, and attracting great talent, retaining it. And that the sooner that you figure that out, the easier it is to build and scale your firm.
Why do you think it still is today that firms look the other way when it comes to intake and sales? They don't really put a lot of attention in there or money in there.
It's a complicated one. I'll start with the ops side, which is it's a cost center, not a profit center. So like, hey, should I invest $7,500 when you start, $75,000, $100,000, $125,000 in somebody who's not producing work on cases? That's a big step off a cliff. I think that intake historically, nobody trains you on how to do it. You graduate law school, you start building the phones where you got to do something with it. When you start, it could be your cell phone. And then there's the old school people that are sort of still with a receptionist. The moment the mindset shifts to it's intake or sales, and it's different than everything else. And I may be behind the curve. I think the people who get to sales over even intake, legendary people in the space, yourself and others, have coined this intake concept. But when you a book on convergence, it's sales. What can you squeeze? How much juice can you squeeze out of the orange? I think that lawyers can't even conceptualize it. Sales is a dirty word. And it's complicated. The reason you went to law school is to get away from sales. I know, look at my mom. My dad still practicing law at 89. And she,
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, he loves it. He's on it full based. But to her, the money was a dirty concept. And this is not everybody. I'm just saying this was the mentality. He was a professional who had referrals and worked hard and made money, but nobody was ever looking at percentage of collections or percentage of signings or anything like that. It was people were called, he signed up, it was relationship based. And that in the B2C world that we play in today, especially where digital marketing is at play, it's a very quick transaction. It's almost like an elevator pitch or meeting somebody in the line at Starbucks. Literally today, I posted about I'm on the elevator at in an office building in Fort Lauderdale, going to visit a buddy who's on 50. On 35, a young, nice guy gets on the phone, well dressed, started talking to me. He just left big law, started his own firm. Said hello, exchanged contact information, didn't think anything of it. Looked up a few years later. This is Jonathan Pollard, one of the most influential guys on LinkedIn, who posts all the time. And it's like, it is. Are you looking to connect? What's your mentality? And if your mentality is that you're an introvert, hypothetically running the law firm, you don't get that it's this interpersonal connection that you need to make in the time of that elevator ride. How can that person, who may be your lowest paid person at the firm, so part of it is figuring out, how do you, I've come 360 on this. I started off with recent college grads that would work 2 years and then come out. Part of the flaw in my model was, as we evolved, two problems with that idea. One, people stopped going to law school in droves. So the people that were doing 2 years before law school weren't the same. And somebody who doesn't need the job because they want to go to law school is a very different hire. So I think it's figuring out what skill sets are needed. Since COVID, we focused very deeply on overseas labor and figuring out what can be done with overseas labor and what can't, and leveraging as much as we can with overseas so that the people we get domestically can be paid a real salary and not just a starter salary with a burnout rate. But how do you change the relationship from, it's my lowest price person because I need a lot of people, to I want the best possible person, because if they can squeeze more juice out of the orange because they could talk to somebody on that elevator ride and in 90 seconds bond with them, that is worth a lot more than the least you can pay. And so the more you can turn that into a career, the better. Different philosophies. Some people love to, people burn out after 2 years and move on. I have moved, my aspiration is to have more stickiness and make it more sustainable. Not always easy, but I think getting away from the idea that this is, what's the cheapest butt I can put in a seat to answer the phone, and instead take great pride in that. And that, since most lawyers bury their heads in the sand, especially for a lot of them that are now virtual, unless you're listening to recorded calls, you really don't know what's going on. And so that the sooner you can, I always tell people, I'm sure you tell them the same thing, the sooner you have a dedicated intake person, the better. Then the sooner you can have somebody who's overseeing that team that's not just doing a bunch of different stuff, the better. That's not going to happen day one if you have one person doing intake. But if you have one person, two people doing intake, making sure that your firm administrator, I just mentioned a minute ago, is responsible for managing and training these people. Because if nobody's managing and training them, then who the hell knows what you're getting? And even if it's good for a day, give it 6 months, God forbid, to see what's there.
Yeah. Turn intake into a career. Intake, sales intake, whatever it is that you're going to call it. Turn it into a career opportunity for people to stay longer and want to grow within. But the other thing is to talk, what about virtual? So what does that look like for you as far as people working remote?
I mean, our intake, we used to be all in the basement of my law firm in DC. It was expensive. It was hard to get people to come to the office. There are some huge drawbacks of remote work, but there are some amazing benefits. Who you can recruit, ability to get pricing differently, whether it be around the country or around the world. And with technology, you really should be able to measure not just productivity, but as a this is a very controversial subject, but activity. Assuming somebody's there and they're not off lollygagging, can you get people that are engaged from around the country and around the world? And just give you an idea, DC, because of commuting costs and time, the hard cost of the time it takes, you really don't retain anybody in DC for less than 60,000. And over time, it's probably closer to 70 if you're being honest with yourself. Nobody's going to be with you in 18 months if they're not at $65,000 in the jobs that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I'm being, there's always exceptions. By going nationally, there are places in this country where $40,000 is a decent wage that you can live on. Where in my market, that's low. This minimum wage is coming up to like $17 an hour. So, if people at McDonald's are making this number, you clearly have to be paying more. So the idea that you can arbitrage what you're paying to get talent from all over, great. And then I think figuring out, one of the light bulbs that went off for me is we need bilingual intake. Well, bilingual intake then was 60,000. Now, Lord knows what it would be if I did it in DC. And I'm like, well, if Spanish, English, or English, Spanish, as long as they're both there and the person is at, $8, $9, $10 an hour, it allows me to, use people in the seats where they're needed. I get, there's definitely an advantage to domestic labor in many areas, but figuring out how you can triage it, because part of it is, this is sort of what I've always worked towards since the day I started international was, let's say you have a pre-lit paralegal team and they're making X. The idea that you could theoretically take two of those, the rock stars, and pay them 20% more, and then have a team of international people that supported each of them. And you may not save that much, you probably will, but the idea that you're able to give the delta, you're not paying bottom dollar, but giving extra money to the people you want to retain, but reducing the headcount somewhat, so that, and then leveraging other labor to prop that up and make that work. To me, that's the ultimate from where I sit.
Yeah. 100%. So what, let me ask you this what about AI? What are your thoughts about that for intake?
For intake. Well, look, AI it's an amazing piece. We are scratching the surface. The stuff that excites me, I can't tell you I'm doing it all today. The stuff that excites me that I'm trying to figure out how to get right is, I would like all calls while we're listening to X% live, not live, but listening to the actual words, the idea that AI could score them and let you know where they are. They can give you scores. Again, everything taken with a grain of salt, but it gives you a baseline. You could see if something changed with a person who's no longer performing at that level. It has empathy scores. I mean, what it can do, I'm still trying to figure much of this out about where that fits in. There's some very expensive sales ones like Gong that are really interesting. And the question is, are we willing to spend that much money on this piece of software for this? Or is there more basic AI that we can use? So I love it for that. I love it for responding. If you're doing, for chats, we're already using an intaker that's essentially some version of machine learning. I love it for responding to emails. Now, it's not like you take the AI, you do it and you respond to it, but I don't know if you've ever taken a post on LinkedIn, if you've written something out, or even, I don't know if it does it for Facebook, it may, where it says improve with AI.
Right.
And it's amazing. When you're using ChatGPT or Gemini and you say, I need a thank you note for this. And what I love, and again, this is where I think the future is, when somebody emails with 4 questions, the ability to be able to say for AI to take that and answer the question. You look at it, those 3 are perfect. You know what? This one needs to be changed, and then getting it out. And only with time will it be better and better. So to me, it is going to be an integral part. I think it is that people are more focused on the PI sector, demands, medcrons, things like that. But that the stuff that really excites me, as I'm sure you, is improving training, quality control, all of those things where we all want to listen to every recorded call, but we don't. And then sometimes you don't for a period of time. And using that as a stopgap, I think is huge.
It's huge. I love it, love it, love it. And then even for AI to go to that next step of coaching the intake sales specialist,
it's opening data in, data out. There are issues with stuff. You got to make sure you're not putting client confidential stuff out to ChatGPT, using private GPT. There's all sorts of restrictions. But once you figure that out, and again, like anything else, it's crowdsourcing. And if you're trying it and you like it, you want something to change, you tweak it. But the idea that you're moving towards making people better with technology is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. Before we go, let me just ask you one more question about AI. What about AI handling inbound calls?
Good friends like Gary Falkowitz is a partner in this piece. I see it right now in the phone tree area working really nicely. I think that with accents and all sorts of other pieces, my feeling is in legal, our leads are too valuable for the most part, unless you're so underwater that you're desperate. But, to me, and stuff that I've talked to people in your space about, that when you, the best thing you could possibly get are your own people trained. But there are places, high volume mass tort shops, to me, if you have the volume, I want to spend the money. I love spending money on intake because it means I'm making more money. I don't love that experience. What's the argument? Overnight? Are there places for it? Is this going to replace the old phone tree? Press 1, press 2, press 3? Probably. but it's dodgy. Hyatt has one of those out there right now and gave me answers and it was just dead wrong. It's going to get there, but I feel like we're in our infancy, and I don't love putting. I am conservative, risk averse in pushing the needle on that. I would rather invest in people, domestic, international, and AI to train them than this piece. That said, on the chat side, I saw AI chat essentially overtake live chat for the most part, as far as how to get people answer to the questions they want without doing any harm. People can do stuff like start giving legal advice. Generally a well-programmed AI does not. There are issues like that. A brief from a high-profile law firm where it hallucinated stuff. They'll figure that out. To me, that's early stage AI. We're figuring out these pieces. So, to me, I think it is getting there. You tell me, have you seen AI replace the humans yet on intake?
No, not yet. Not yet. No. And yeah, I don't think I'm not thinking of it as replacing the humans, like get rid of your team and there you go. But I think there's plenty of room for it to be an assistant to the humans, and to handle some type of intake, whether it's inbound or outbound. But I don't think it's there yet either.
And you need this is the thing right now. What percentage of people are so turned off by it that they hang up? That would be the example. So do you remember early web chat where it popped up all over the screen?
I do.
And I was like, okay, well, some people love it, but other people are like, this is too invasive, and they click off. I turned it off, right? And so, you don't get that. You get the great data of the people that do sign up, but how many people did you lose that would have called in and would have been a client? And so I think it's similarly yes, you're going to get some wheat from Shaft, but are you losing people who are like, I don't want to deal with this?
You have to look at everything. You can't just dive in and do it and shiny object and let's go. You gotta
right. But you know what? I admire so much the people that are doing it. It is going to get there. And there are definitely, like everything, it depends. If you're a solo practice and it's going to go to voicemail, and you could ask a bunch of questions and find out, this is a new case, and that gets emailed to you and everything else doesn't, okay, there's a place for that. But if you're a meaningful firm at scale and you have people answering the phones, I would rather, I don't love that as an ethos, but Lord knows over the years, I've had times my intake people took 3 minutes to pick up, with an overflow answering service. Would I have been better off with that? Maybe. So I think it's figuring it out. I think we're getting there quickly, but I don't think we're there yet. Push on.
Yeah, there's a place for everything. There's a time for everything. Well, thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for tuning in to Lawyers Tell All, where Chris Mullins takes you on a journey with lawyers in the trenches who show you the realities of what it takes to succeed in this chaotic, crowded, ever-changing profession. Remember to visit our website at www.lawyerstellall.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Lawyers Tell All.